Missed watching Jon Jones thrash his opponents in the octagon? I did too. However, everything's about to go back to as it once was. But first of all, Jon Jones is finally coming back to the UFC. But it has been a long time since we last saw him fight. Should that be a cause for concern? Sure, he was the king of the light heavyweight division, but after 3 long years of absence, who knows what's going to go down on March 4th? But even more importantly, who's he going to fight? Drum roll please, it's Ciryl Gane. The fight scheduled for UFC 285 in Las Vegas, and I couldn't be more excited. But wait, there's more. He isn't fighting for nothing. Yep, Jones vs. Gane will be for the newly vacant heavyweight championship. We might see Jon Jones return after 3 years away and win a championship in his first fight. What more can we ask for? Like, could this thing get any better?
Beard of the world, Jon Bones Jones!
Wait, what? Jon Jones has signed an 8-fight deal? Yeah, you heard me. Guess it can get better. Much better. Johnny Bones back, and he's back for good. 8 fights might not sound like a lot, but this means we'll see him in action for at least 3 to 4 years. This news just made my day, and I know it did yours too. What this 8-fight deal also means is that he'll most likely retire as a UFC fighter. He's 35 now, and by the end of his contract, he'll be 39 or 40. There's only so long you can fight for before your body starts telling you to stop. And maybe that's what Jon Jones will also do. Everyone knows that his relationship with UFC wasn't on the best terms in the last few years, which really makes one wonder, what made Jones leave in the first place? As I said, it wasn't a secret that Jones and the UFC weren't the best of pals for the past few years. But why? Why was the promotion's relationship with one of its greatest fighters so bad? Take a guess, because it's pretty simple. Of course, it was money. You see, when talks were still ongoing for Francis Ngannou versus Jon Jones, Jones laid out some hefty demands regarding the payments. And to absolutely no one's surprise, the UFC did not give in. Jon Jones obviously didn't like that and said he felt like someone has put a cap on him. But Dana White had a different view on this matter. He said Jon Jones was trying to get out of the fight, and that's why he made absurd demands. The UFC president said there are many ways fighters can use to get out of any fight, and one of them's to negotiate themselves out of it. Demand so much money that the promotion has to ask you if you're out of your mind, or if the punches from the last fight struck a little too rough. But finally, and I don't know how, but the two parties have finally come to an agreement, and Jon Jones will be making his way back to the octagon.
I love you all. Thank you so much. Even the haters, all the negativity, all the discouraging things that was said. I love you guys too, because you guys motivated me and pushed me to just keep fighting.
But all this talk about Jones' return to the UFC really makes one think about the last time we saw him fight. I really can't wait for March, and I'm sure you can't either. Waiting is the hardest thing in the world to do, especially when it's for something of this magnitude. Do you know when was the last time he fought? It was in February 2020 at UFC 247. Yep, it's been that long since Jones took on Dominic Reyes and defeated him via a split decision. 6 months later, he made the switch to the heavyweight division. His track record? Well, in that division, he has been on the sidelines since. Now that he has agreed to fight, though, the only thing we can think of is that he must have gotten his wish, a crazy amount of money. Yes, a lot of us think that Jones is going to do good in the heavyweight division, but here's someone who knows why. Let's look at what Paul Felder said about Jones' heavyweight career. Who's Paul Felder, some of you might ask? Amateurs. But he's a UFC color commentator and an analyst. Happy? Anyway, Felder thinks that in the heavyweight division, Jones will become an even stronger and more dangerous fighter than ever. And I hope that does exactly that, because the guys in the heavyweight division are huge. They're so built that they almost look inhuman. But don't worry, what I'm going to tell you next will calm you down a bit. You see, Jones has been bulking up. For all the time that Jones was out, you might have thought that he was out there chilling with his homies. Johnny Bones was actually busy getting himself ready for the heavyweight division. He worked tirelessly every day to gain a considerable amount of weight. Because, first of all, you need a certain amount of weight to compete in that division. Also, he has been adding enough size and muscle to his body that he can compete with those huge machines. Because you don't want to step into the heavyweight division with the same build that you had in the lightweight division. Because if you do that, you're going to embarrass yourself massively and might even get tossed around like a football. But Jones obviously isn't about that life. He's usually the thrower and not the throwee. Not that he'd let anyone manhandle him at a lighter weight, but it's just better to be safe, you know? Always works. But then again, Felder wasn't just saying that Jones will be better at heavyweight without any explanation. He's a man of experience and said if Jones does this one thing, it will give him an advantage over all of his opponents. What's that? He needs to use his fighting IQ. Paul thinks that Jon Jones has a much better fighting IQ than all of the fighters across all the divisions in the UFC. And he says that all he needs to do is use his fighting IQ. Use it to try and figure out his opponents, find out their weaknesses, and find out different ways to approach them. This one thing will make him a superstar in the division and also a champion. And I agree with him totally. Jones is probably the smartest fighter I've ever seen.
Man, the first time I fought Alexander, I stayed in his punching range. And the main difference was I was aware of how far away I was at all times. Alexander did some great combinations, but if you really go back and watch the fight, he landed very few punches on my face tonight. And that was just from a greater sense of understanding. I really think our team is the most dangerous team, especially when we get a rematch.
He's the one who dominates all of his fights and forces opponents to make mistakes so he can pounce on them. I mean, just look at his record. It's insane. The IQ thing isn't the only issue, though. So let's address the big problem with Jon Jones' performances throughout his career, starting with how nonchalant he is about his opponents. Okay, this happens when you're someone who has defeated everyone in your division and you're just looking for some competition, but taking opponents lightly isn't something you should do, and I'm not just saying it myself. Jones himself admitted that he has this problem, that he does take some opponents lightly. We saw the last 3 of his fights, and although he won all of them, he struggled at times. He struggled to be interested in that fight, and he won those fights based on pure talent. Maybe in the heavyweight division, he won't do this because he'll face more and more competition. And I'll pray that he doesn't make this mistake there. This, folks, was all I knew about his new contract and his comeback so far. See you in the next one.